Hi, beautiful people. I'm going to be reading Pride and Prejudice, Volume 2, Chapter 9. Let's start now. Elizabeth was sitting by herself the next morning and writing to Jane while Mrs. Collins and Maria were gone on business into the village. When she was startled by a ring at the door, the certain signal of a visitor, as she had heard no carriage, she thought it would not unlikely to be Lady Catherine, and under that comprehension was putting away her half finished letter and and that she might escape all the impertinent questions when the door opened, and to hear her great surprise, Mr. Darcy and Mr. Darcy only entered the room. He seemed astonished to on finding her alone, and apologized for his intrusion by letting her know that he had understood all the ladies to be within. They then sat down, and when her inquiries after Rosens were made, seemed in danger of sinking into total silence. It was absolutely necessary, therefore, to think of something, but in this immediate recollecting when she had seen him last in Hertfordshire, and feeling curious to know what he would say on the subject of their hasty departure, she observed, "How very sadly you quitted Netherfield last September, Mr. Darcy. It must have been a most agreeable surprise to Mr. Bentley to see you all after him so soon. For if I recollected right, it went he went but the day before he and his sisters were well, I hope, when you left London. Perfectly so, I thank you." She found that she was to receive no other answer, and after a short pause added, "I think I have understood that Mr. Bentley had not much idea of ever returning to Netherfield again. I have never heard of I have never heard him say so, but it is probable that he may spend very little of his time there in future. He has many friends, and he is at a time of life when friends and engagements are continually increasing. If he means to be a little at Netherfield, it will be better for the neighborhood that he should give up the place entirely, for then we might possibly at a settled family there. But perhaps Mr. Bentley did not take the house so much for the convenience of the neighborhood as for his own. We must expect him to keep or quit it on the same principle. I should not be surprised," said Darcy, "if he were to give it up as soon as any eligible purchase offers." Elizabeth made no answer. She was surprised of talking longer of his friends, and having nothing else to say, was now determined to leave the trouble of finding a subject to him. He took the hint, and soon began with, "This seems a very comfortable house. Lady Catherine, I believe, did a great deal of to it when Mr. Collins first came to Hansford." "I believe she did, but I'm sure she could not have bestowed her kindness on a more grateful object. Mr. Collins appears very fortunate in his choice of a wife." "Yes, indeed. His friends may well rejoice in his having met with one of a very few sensible women who would have accepted him, or have made him happy if they had. My friend has an excellent understanding, though I am not certain that I consider her married Mr. Collins as the wisest thing she ever did. She seems perfectly happy. However, in this prudential light, it is certainly a very good match for her. It must be very agreeable to her to be settled within so easy a distance of her own family and friends. An easy distance, do you call it? It is nearly 50 miles. And what is 50 miles of good read? Little more than half a day's journey. Yeah, I call it very easy journey. I should never have considered the distance as one of the advantage of the match, cried Elizabeth. I should never have said Mr. Darcy was settled near her husband. It is a proof of your own attachment to Hertfordshire. Anything beyond any, anything beyond the very environment of Longbourn, I suppose, would have appeared far. As he spoke, there was a sort of smile which Elizabeth fancied she understood. He must be supposing her to be thinking of Jane and Netterfield, and she blushed as she answered, "I did not know. I did not mean to say that a woman may not be settled too near her family. The far and the near must be relative and depend on many varying circumstances, whether it's fortunate to make where there is fortunate to make the expense of traveling on important distance becomes no evil, and that is not the case here. Mr. and Mrs. Collins have a comfortable income, and not such a one as will allow of frequent journeys, and I'm persuaded my friend would not call herself near her family under less than half the present distance." Mr. Darcy drew his chair a little towards her, and said, "You cannot have a right to such a very strong local attachment. You cannot have been always at Longbourn." Elizabeth looked surprised. The gentleman experienced some change of feeling. He drew back his chair, took a newspaper from the table, and glancing over it, said in a colder voice, "Are you pleased with Kent?" A short dialogue on the subject of the country ensued on either side, calm and concise, and soon put an end to by the entrance of Charlotte and her sister, just returned from their walk. The tete surprised them. Mr. Darcy related the mistake which had occasioned his intruding on Miss Bennet, and after sitting a few minutes longer without saying much to anybody, went away. "What can be the meaning of this?" said Charlotte as soon as he was gone. "My dear Eliza, he must be in love with you, or he would never have called on us in this familiar way." But when Elizabeth told of his silence, and it did not seem very likely when even to Charlotte's wishes to be the case, and after various conject- congestions, congestories, congest, congestory, conjectures. They could at last only suppose his visit to proceed from the difficulty of finding anything to do, which was the more probable from the time of the year. All field sports were over. Within doors there was Lady Catherine, books and billion table, and gentlemen cannot be always within doors. And in the nearest of parsonage or the pleasantness of the walk of it and of the people who live in it. The two cousins found a temptation from this period of walking together almost every day. They called at various times of the morning and sometimes separately, sometimes together, and then accompanied by their aunt. It was plain to them all that Colonel Fitzwilliam came because he had pleasure in their society, a persuasion which of course recommended him still more, and Elizabeth was reminded by her own satisfaction in being with him as well as by his evident admiration of her and of her former favourite George Wickham, and though in comparing them she saw there was less captivating softness in Colonel Fitzgerald's manners, and she believed he might have the best informed mind. But why Mr. Darcy came so often to the parsonage, it was more difficult to understand. It could not be for society, for he frequently sat there 10 minutes together without opening his lips, and when he did speak, it seemed the effect of necessity rather than of choice, a sacrifice to pro, property, property, propriety, not a pleasure to himself. He seldom appeared really animated. Mrs. Collins knew not what to make of him. Colonel Fitzwilliam's occasionally laughing at his stupidity proved that he was generally different, which her own knowledge of him could not have told her, and as she would have liked to believe this changed the effect of love, and the object of that love, her friend Elizzie, she set herself seriously to work to find it out. She watched him whenever there were rosens, and whenever he came to her, henceforth, and without much success, he certainly looked at her friend a great deal, but the expression of that look was disposable, and it was an earnest, steadfast gaze, and when she often doubted whether there was much admiration in it, and sometimes it seemed nothing but absence of mind. She she had once or twice subjected to Elizabeth the possibility of his being partial to her, and Elizabeth always laughed at that idea. And Mrs. Collins think it did not think it right to pass the subject from the danger of raising expectation, which might only end in disappointment for her. For in her opinion, it admitted not of doubt that all her friend's dislike would vanish if she would have supposed him to be in her power. In her kind scheme for Elizabeth, she sometimes planned her marrying Colonel Fraser. First, no Fitzgerald. I was thinking Fitzgerald. Oh my goodness, I was thinking Ella Fitzgerald. No, Colonel Fitzwilliam. He was beyond comprehension. The pleasantest man. He certainly admired her, and his situation in life was most eligible. But to counterbalance these advantage, Mr. Darcy had considerable patronage in the church, and his cousin would have none at all. I'm done. And his cousin could have none at all. Yeah, I'm done. I'm done reading it. I'm gonna read the next chapter tomorrow. I'm so proud of myself for reading it. Yeah, I am. Thank you, and have a nice day. Bye bye.